in March last year, my son and I went out to Iceland. You see the dates there, and we arrived a couple of days early, and then we joined a tour group and such. And I'm just going to run through that and show a few photos and talk a little bit about Iceland. But key going into it, no bad weather, only bad clothing choices, right? I mean, I'm 69 years old. I'd never heard that before. Since then, I've heard it. I can't tell you how many times. So apparently it's a thing everybody knew but me. But and this is just kind of a typical day, and whiteout conditions in southern Iceland on the road there. So hang on here. There we go. Just very briefly, big takeaways out of here is Iceland is just a little bit smaller than the state of Virginia. All right. So, and while we have 8 point, whatever it is, 8.4 million people, Iceland's got about 400,000 people. 250,000 of those people live in the city of Reykjavik. The second largest city is Akureyri, which has about 20,000 people, right? So, and then everybody else is just spread out in the wilderness and everything. So, not a very densely populated place by any stretch of the imagination. The vast majority of the country is just a tad bit south of the Arctic Circle, okay? But it's way up there, and I think the biggest thing that I shouldn't have been surprised about, but I was everybody there that we ran into, and we were all around the country. And I'll show you that picture. Knows English, and I mean fluent English, right? It's no problem. A few of the people I ran into, and these are locals in small little towns doing, working at restaurants or whatever, they sound like they were from Southern California or someplace, and it's like, okay, got it. So everybody knows English. So, and when I was there, they're not part of the EU, so they use the Icelandic kroner, and it was 138 to the dollar and such. Although they do the very annoying swap the decimal point for the comma in their numbers, which I find just incredibly unsettling when I'm trying to figure out how much something costs. So, but so we were there. This is flew out from Dulles round trip. It was about $650 round trip per person. Just my son and I both flew. The tour itself is not cheap. Okay, was $7,000 per person. I will tell you that in my life of photography, that's probably some of the best money I've ever spent on photography. I tend to buy gear, and if I'm not buying gear, I'm thinking about buying gear. But to actually spend money to get out to a place and learn more about photography, learn more about editing, and then also to take a lot of fabulous photos, as well as be on a vacation on a tour, and especially when your tour buddy is your son, it was just fabulous. When you get to Keflavik's about 45 minutes outside of downtown Reykjavik, and so there you take a bus, and that's a $70 round trip to get into that bus. I arranged for that a couple of months ahead of time, and it's all pretty seamless once you get there. They've got it down to a science. The picture there that's me in the Santa Claus beard there, and then next to me is Siggy. Sigurdur Brynjarsson was our guide. He's a Icelandic guy, born and raised in the West Fjords. A guy named Jeff Gratz, there in blue, hamming it up. He's a retired IT guy and a fine art photographer, runs his own website, does shows, sells prints. And then that's my son on the far left, Nick. And that's our trusty steed. He spent 12 days driving around the country in that van. Here's the overview. This is the Google Maps, and I dropped a pin for just about all the places we went. So it's pretty clear where the ring road is there in that picture. Okay, and if you look at it, you'll see the number 1 because that's Route 1 getting you around there. The yellow dots with a white star in it are the hotel places that we stopped, and so there were 7 of those. So that's $7,000. Covered 13 nights in hotels all around the country, and some of the places were 1 nights. There were a couple of 2-nighters, and then there was one 3-night stay. That was up here in Mevat. You'll see a number of photos up here. Can you see my cursor going around up there north?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Mevat. So you're going to see photos from a lot of these places going all around the country. This area right here, this big white area, what they call the Vatnajökull, is the Vatna Glacier, and you'll see a number of pictures coming out of that. It's obviously quite a huge glacier. There's a number of outfalls from it. Outfalls being where icebergs, if you will, are being calved, okay, into streams and then going out to sea. So I got some pictures of that kind of stuff here. Here's Keflavik out here on the end, and then Reykjavik right here. All the recent eruptions that have been going on are right in this area here of Grindavik. And in fact, the day we left, literally as we were taken off, an eruption started, which was kind of cool. We didn't see it obviously until we got back home, and our guide said, "Hey, you just missed an eruption." So I guess that's a good or bad thing. Ring road here, again, called the N1. It's about 850 miles if you just drive it nonstop. So, it's a very, very long day's drive or an easy-ish 2-day drive around it. We did it in 12 days, okay, because we stopped all kinds of places, but pretty good road conditions. There's a typical view out the front of the van. Not a whole lot going on in a lot of the country. Like I said, it's pretty desolate most places. Mostly all 2-lane. There are a couple of 1-lane bridges. Mostly that is in the south. I would say if you're going to go off-road at all, then you should definitely have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. But I feel very comfortable now having done this and driving it that, Nick and I would go back in a heartbeat. I'd like to get to the West Fjords. I'd like to get to the Highlands because that wasn't part of where we went on this trip. So there's a couple areas here I'd like to see, but I feel very comfortable driving. And thankfully, unlike the UK, they drive on the correct side of the road there. So typical battle rhythm, okay? Up early, you're out, get breakfast, get checked out of the hotel, get on the road to get to the sunrise photos. Sunrise, as you see there, was about 8:20, okay? And that 8:20 is coming up over the horizon, right? Well, typically where you got mountains and the sun's not up over the mountains for, another 15, 20 minutes after that. So you had plenty of time to get up, eat breakfast, get out of the hotel, get to the location, get set up, because obviously, you're looking at what you want a little bit of blue hour, but mostly what you want is some of that golden hour after the sun comes up. Taking photos all day, convenience store for lunch. There's a typical picture. I fell in love with these smoked lamb and bean salad sandwiches, that they make there in Iceland, and they were awesome. And that's pretty much what I had for lunch for 13 days. Then you either got to the hotel, got checked in, and then went back out again for sunset photos at some location, or a number of days, we just stayed out all day, did the sunset again. The sunset's 1840, but remember that's over the horizon. Typically the sun's down below the mountains well before that. And with a few exceptions, pretty much you've lost the light at that point, the good light. Then head back to the hotel, dinner, download, edit, sleep, and then rinse and repeat the next day. There's one picture, the upper right over there, Hotel Framden, is on the southeast coast. This is kind of a typical example of a lot of the hotels that we stayed in. Some bigger. This is probably the smallest one that we were at, but so most of them were a little bit bigger, but not much. But and then again, another picture outside the window and such. Talk a little bit about the kit. So this is the Aldeafoss waterfall here, and I'll talk about that waterfall a little bit later and show some other photos of it. But this is my standard travel rig. It has been now for a number of years. 40 megapixel digital rangefinder. All right, so that's manual focus, manual aperture. I can do auto ISO. I can do auto shutter speeds if I want, but it's just been a great system for me. Rangefinder cameras, as you probably know, are not really conducive to zoom lenses at all. So just 3 primes. I had a 25 millimeter, a 50, and a 90. And these are tiny little lenses. They fit in coat pockets easily. and such. So even though I did have a bag that all my stuff was stuffed into, once I got into the van, I didn't use it. I just kept the lenses were in my pockets, and I was just good to go from there. You see a kind of a little bit of a percentage breakdown, 40%, 40%, and 20% on the use of the 25 to 50 and the 90. And then my trusty tripod, I would say, if you're going to go there, my experience was, so it blows a lot. Okay. The temperatures we had while we were there were mostly kind of not too much different than what we've been seeing now. Okay. And then in the last couple of weeks, anywhere from the, low 20s up into the mid 30s and such. Saw some rain, saw snow. But what was the constant was the wind. And my son had kind of a small travel tripod, and he struggled with that. He basically had to stay with it all the time and keep a hold of the darn thing. Now, he had a much bigger camera system than I did, but still, he didn't want to get too far away from it. But this Robus has been a workhorse for me, and I've loved it. You see a 3.6 and a 10-stop filter and a circular polarizer. I don't ever recall using the circular polarizer, but one of those ND filters was on the camera probably a third of the time. So they were used a lot for me. I did take a backup camera. I will not take a backup camera the next time I go, and I have not taken a backup camera on any of the trips I've done subsequent to this one, because I found that the phone, my iPhone 15 Pro Max, if you got that, you're shooting raw DNGs. You edit those just like you edit any other DNGs. It is awesome. I did bring my son's a Nikon shooter, so he had his Z6 and his Z8 with him, and a couple of different three different zoom lenses. And so I brought a M lens to Z body adapter. So I spent a little bit of time using his Z6 with one of my, the 50, the 25, or the 90, usually the 90 attached to it, and shooting pictures out of that just for fun. I have a hard time with, I just find rangefinder focusing so much easier than just looking through the lens with my eyes and everything and trying to figure out what's sharp and what's not sharp. But, and I've never, so I didn't use it that much, but it's a pretty cool thing. And then lens cleaning kit and a backpack. Again, the backpack was only used to get my kit from the hotel into the van, and from the van back into the hotel. Other than that, the camera was always around my neck and shoulder, under my jacket. I had a spare battery in my pocket, a spare SD card in my pocket, and then I had the other two lenses in my pockets as well. And that's all I ever needed for the whole trip. Worked a treat. I'll talk about these different areas. The Northern Lights, Diamond Beach, those are pretty much the number one and the number twos. People go to Iceland to go see, but churches, you get out on Instagram and you look at Iceland. If you're not seeing pictures of the Northern Lights, pictures of Diamond Beach, then you're seeing pictures of churches, or you're seeing pictures of ponies, or you're seeing pictures of waterfalls. All right. And that's just what everybody does when they go to Iceland. So I'll talk about all these different areas. Picture on the right is our guy Jeff, who was the other paying participant on the group, other than my son and I. And we're walking out to Dettifoss, which is a very, very, very large waterfall in the north of Iceland. And it was probably pushing a mile from where we parked, walking out over that stuff. Although it was good footing. I will say this about, with the recent ice we've got, I tend to walk around with kind of the city slicker crampons, just have those little metal dots on the bottom of the rubber thing. These are like no fooling half-inch spikes, okay, that we were wearing when we were up there. And they were necessary. Has anybody shot Northern Lights before? Been up in any of these places and shot before? Maybe not. All right. So I would just tell you, there's a couple things I would say before I show just a few pictures here. Is one, dress for success. Okay. And I would say that for, obviously you're in Iceland in the wintertime, right? So you should be dressed warmly. But for these Northern Lights, you're typically going out and just sitting and waiting for something to happen. Okay. And one night we were out, we left the hotel at probably 10 o'clock at night, and we didn't get back to the hotel till almost 2 in the morning. Okay. And I was frozen. My feet were blocks of ice. My hands were frozen. I got to the point where I just could not shoot the camera anymore. Fortunately, we left soon after that, but dress warmly. Headlamp with either green or red light is good. Obviously, you need a tripod because when you're shooting northern lights like this, you're going to be taking longer exposures. Uh, I just used the 2-second self timer, worked fine for me. I didn't use a remote trip. Spare batteries because the cold's going to sap your batteries. Um, I would say wide angle, bring as wide as you had. The widest I had with me was 25 for the Northern Lights, something like a 15, 18 would have been awesome to have just to get more of the sky in it. And the other two guys, my son and Jeff, and then of course our guide, we're all shooting like 14 or 15 millimeter lenses, and they were able to get in some of the northern lights, horizon to horizon, almost like the double rain, not double rainbow bowl, but the full, touch on the horizon on both side kind of angles was with something underneath it, to give you some visual element. So I was unable to get those big shots like that, but I got great shots anyway. So I'm happy. I just shoot auto white balance because I shoot raw. Been very pleased with the auto white balance out of the camera. No issues. You got to focus to manual, which was very easy for me because they're manual focus lenses with a hard stop at infinity and they're dead on accurate. That's not the case with, your standard autofocus lenses. So you got to play around a little bit to get it to focus to infinity. And there's a variety of ways you can do that. And then what I'd recommend is once you do that, it's kind of like when you're shooting the Milky Way is tape it. If you got grip tape with you, then just tape your focus down so you don't accidentally bump the thing. Aperture, typically shooting wide. Again, your focus to infinity, depth of field is not an issue for you. And you need to bring in a lot of light because you're shooting at dark, right? The comment I wrote here on the shutters, you can, and ISO, obviously, you're only the other two factors here. ISO, you're going to go as high as you're willing to let it go, right? And then depending on whatever you use for noise, to clean up noise in the end. But I'm very pleased with the denoise AI out of Lightroom, and I'm comfortable up to 64, but I didn't shoot any higher than 3200. But if you go long shutter speeds, which lets you get your ISO down, then you kind of get these dreamy blurs with the northern lights. If you go to shorter shutter speeds, again, you're going to need a higher ISO for that. But now you start seeing texture within the northern lights that can be kind of cool here. And I have a few examples of that in here. Not because I was smart and I'm an awesome photographer, but better lucky than good is kind of the catchphrase of my life here. So most of these shots I'm showing you here, again, all 25 millimeter, all shot wide open at 2.8. I wrote shutter speeds 2 to 24 seconds. Most of them were in the longer realm, anywhere from 12 to 24 seconds. And then ISO's 8 to 3200, 800 to 3200 here. So I'll start out here with these two photos. Both of these photos were taken in Lake Mevatten. The three I'll show you after this were taken very near Lake Mevatten, but that was that clump up kind of north central in Iceland. Very large lake there, hence the name lake, and then the town, of course, is called Mevatten. The shot on the left was I'm standing in a parking lot right next to the N1, okay, the ring road, and a car went by, and so what you're seeing there is, a car coming from east to west. I'm looking north, and it obviously lit up the snow on this little crater here and I just kind of like the way it looked, and you can see a little bit of a structure in the banding in the lights there, and again. The shorter the exposure times on your shutter speed, then the more of that banding you're going to see. These lights are moving continually. All right. That's, I've seen YouTubes of it before. I always thought what I was seeing was time lapse photography that they'd sped up. And what I saw wasn't. I mean, it was like every split second, this whole thing was this amorphous amoeba in the sky, just changing colors and moving across the sky. I'd never seen it before. It was amazing. The picture on the right is basically turning 90 degrees from where I was in the first picture. And I'm actually on the other side of the road, but that's looking down the N1, looking to the east, and that's the little church in Mevat and all kind of lit up there and such. So lots of fun. The next night, oh, one last thing on this thing. They measure they measure the strength of the auroras with a K value, and that K value goes from basically 0 to 9. 9 is, kind of like 5 is a category 5 hurricane is the top most powerful hurricane. A K value of 9 is the most powerful of the auroras. I felt at times while I was shooting the aurora, and it was while I was taking those pictures from on the right, uh, I felt I could almost read a newspaper outside. It was that bright, um, which was pretty amazing. We found out the next day, our guide told us that it was like a 7.2 was the K value of that night's aurora. So pretty powerful. The next night we went out, this was the night that went from, about 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. This is around the east side of Lake Mevaten. And again, the picture on the right, you see a little bit of banding, a little bit of structure in there because it was along the, 8-second type exposure thing. And then a little bit more, dreamy ethereal look on the left. Again, not on purpose. I was just trying to get the exposure. And that's because the aurora is moving the whole time. And so obviously the longer the shutter speed, the more movement it's going to be and the less of the detail and the banding you're going to see. I have read that the green colors mean that it's up high in the atmosphere, and the more reddish or more purplish it gets, the lower in the atmosphere it is. And you can see kind of a little bit of both in these images here.
Jim,
And then finally, yeah, go ahead.
on the left, the dots in the water, is that reflections of the stars above?
Yeah. That's so we were in this little we went to the east side of Lake Mevat, and there was this inlet, okay, and this little promontory that came out and crossed over. It almost cut it off. And we went there specifically so we could get some more interesting foreground than literally the parking lot of the hotel where we were staying, which the night before we were in having dinner. The dinner had just shown up to the table. Someone ran in going, "The lights are on, the lights are on." And our guide hopped up and said, "Go get your camera gear out to the parking lot," so with a thick Icelandic accent, of course. And so we're all out there and trying to, figuring this all out, and he talked to us about it ahead of time, but it all happened all very suddenly. And so literally we were standing in the parking lot of the hotel on both sides of the road taking the pictures. That next night, there was a little bit more forethought into it. We actually went to a location to try and get a little bit more interesting foreground and such. So that's kind of what that is. This particular night, though, so I'm looking west on the picture on the right, and I'm looking east on the picture I'm sorry, west on the picture on the left, east on the picture on the right. And there were times when the aurora was just like a rainbow was coming up from the horizon on to the west, all the way to the horizon on the east. It was just spectacular. I couldn't catch that because of the lens I had. But again, if you had like a 14, 15, 16, 18 millimeter wide angle, then I think you could have caught all of that and had some interesting foreground elements as well. But yes, Steve, those are stars. And you can see movement in it too, because again, I forgot what the exposure of this thing was. Let me see here. I wrote a few details down. I think these are 16 and 24 seconds. So long exposures. Okay, so what is this? This is a cell phone. This is handheld. with my iPhone 15 Pro Max 3-second handheld. I was sort of kind of leaning it up against. And yeah, when it's blown up, I've got a 27-inch monitor. When I blow it up at 27 inches, I go, okay, yeah, I can see some. Yeah. Oh, by the way, 12,800 on the ISO out of this thing. Okay. So that's a lot of ISO. All right. And yeah, I ran it through denoise and everything, and it kind of gets you that waxy look in some of the snow. But I tell you, when you see this at social media sized imaging sizes, it looks just fine. Okay. So cell phones work fine. Um, next thing that I want to talk about is a place called Diamond Beach. Diamond Beach is on the south side of uh, Iceland, and it is the beach on the outflow from a lagoon called Glacier Lagoon, and that's where the Vatna Glacier, that's the largest of all the outfalls, come through Glacier Lagoon. Okay, and I'll show you a picture of that lagoon here in a little bit. But what happens is these big blocks of ice like this, they come off as big iceberg looking things, and then they get broken up and they go down this short river under a bridge where the N1 goes across, and then they flow out into this is the North Atlantic Ocean right here. So where I'm looking south, okay, and and such, and they flow out there, and then depending on which way the wind's blowing, which way the current's running, tide coming in, tide going out, they either get washed up on the beach on the east side or get washed up on the beach on the west side. We were on the west side. Um, and the idea is you get your camera out there, you get as close as you can to one of these blocks of ice, you focus on it, and then you dig your feet in and you get the death grip onto your tripod because these waves are coming in and coming out. Okay. And there were times, so that's my son standing there with his, with, I don't know, $6,000 worth of Nikon Z6 and some schwanky lens and everything. And there were times when the water was up over his knee there, and it's moving fast, right? And you're trying not to drop in the water with your camera kit, right? And I'll show you some pictures in a moment. So um, again, some of the same stuff with regard, you want depth of field here. So, tighten up on the depth of field. We were in the sunrise is when we had gone out there, but it was gray and overcast. And as you can see in the picture, that was what little bit of pink you see on the horizon there was the most that we had. It was just blue overcast that entire morning here. So, but you're trying to run about a 1 to 2 seconds on the shutter speed, kind of dragging it. And you're looking either for the inflow movement or the outflow movement. I happen to like better the visual of the outflow movement. You'll see both in social media. Um, Important safety tips is do not stand right behind one of these blocks, because if a big enough wave comes, depending on the size of the block, it will move the block into you and cause you to fall over. Okay. And YouTube is covered with Diamond Beach dude gets washed out to sea, and type that in YouTube and you'll see all kinds of videos on people that turned their back on the ocean and didn't pay attention to it. Okay. But this is the kind of stuff you get. All right. And the idea is you want to get right up close to this. I did these in black and white because to me, one, I like black and white. Two, I thought they were far more dramatic. And again, there was no color out there. If you get out on social media, you'll see some days folks are there on the perfect sunrise, right? And it's just color everywhere and all that. Our morning was not like that. And I didn't do any sky replacements or anything like that. So, but I'm real happy with these. Um, but obviously the block of ice is not going anywhere, but everything else in that picture is moving. Okay, the waves out in the background, the flow is moving. It's a basalt, ground up basalt, which is from volcanoes for the beach, and it is black, and then of course you've got the flowing water across it here. But the picture on the left I've got framed, and that's hanging on the wall of my house here. The picture on the right, though, I like, not only the foreground, which was what my interest item was, but you can see the background block of ice. quite a bit of difference. And then you see the movement. These are like 2-second shutter speeds, right? So you'll see the movement in the waves, and that's kind of what you're going for, right? Um, Another couple of my favorites, and I took a lot of photos there that day. It's just nonstop. You're shooting nonstop. Okay. So I'm holding on to the tripod, and I'm just as quick as I can hit the shutter uh, button, waiting on a 1 or 2 second exposure to get the next one. So what you're doing is, like, for instance, the image on the left, I have 50 photos of that with the water in, either coming in, going out. And then you just look for a pattern of water that you like and pick that one. And that's the one you go with, but hell of a lot of fun. And I'm glad that neither my son or I or the other two guys, fell in the water and had their camera gears damaged or anything. But the picture on the right, I really like it. It looks like some kind of alien snail or something. But the wave in the background, to me, really, really kind of made it, because you can see the movement and the drama in that. So a lot of fun. Anyway, it's called Diamond Beach. Um, you guys have seen this photo before. This was in one of the contests I submitted it for, and I submitted in the year-end wrap-up. This is probably one of the most photographed churches anywhere. Okay, certainly in Iceland. It's called the Black Church. It's out on the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Been there a long time. Anyway, we hit just a dramatic, fabulous, fabulous sunrise at this location. This was the day before, because we got there again. We got there in the afternoon the day before, stayed the night, came out early to get that photo. And this is just one of them. This is one of the reflection shots. I had never done a lot with reflections anymore, but I learned reflections and using reflection shots on this trip. This is taken with my cell phone, and truth in advertising, that was taken with a cell phone too, by the way. I hate cell phones. So I'm reflected here off of ice on a top of a grave site, and there's just a thin layer of water on top of the ice, and so that's where this reflection came from. But again, cell phone held down low, take the picture. Another church. This is the oldest church in Iceland. Goes back like, I don't know, 1,000 years or some crazy number like that. It's wood and turf. Now, we were told that, obviously not all the turf doesn't go back to those ages. There's regular maintenance that's done to it, but a number of the beams on the inside of the church and some of the wood in it all dates back to original. But again, a little bit of ice in the foreground, and you get these easy peasy reflection shots. Another famous church. This is in Vik on the south coast. The standard picture you see of this is you're off to the right. I'll say off to the left, looking down to the right, and you get the church, and then you get some beach that's down off to the right. I just like this view of it and such. So you'll see that graveyard associated with that church. I just thought the symmetry looked good with this. This is the king of the churches in Iceland. This is Hallgrim's church, and it's in Reykjavik, right downtown. You cannot miss it. Anywhere you are, anywhere near Reykjavik, and you see this church. It's huge. Looks like it's made out of Legos, but it's made to mimic the basalt columns that are ubiquitous out in the wild in Iceland. And this is right downtown. You can take a elevator up to there's an observation area in there looking out those windows, and you can get a 360 view of Reykjavik and the bay and the surrounds, and it's a perfect place to go up and look at the volcanic oozing that has been going on out of Grindavik. So another view of the top from another day out walking around, just very dramatic, very angular, and it's a cool looking church. These guys are everywhere. Icelandic ponies. They got to be the toughest little ponies I can ever, because it's just cold, it's blowing, and they're out there everywhere. Pretty friendly little guys, very cute, not real big. I mean, they call them Icelandic ponies, but they're not your standard big horse. Okay. But they are everywhere. Everywhere we went, all around 850 miles driving around the N1, we saw ponies everywhere. And of course, you cannot go to Iceland without seeing waterfalls. This is one of the famous ones. This is Godafoss. This is up in the northern part. This is near Lake Mývatn again. This is not in it. It's a half spectacular. We took photos of a number of different places. From the water level down off across on the other side to the right, and then on this side down at the bottom. I've got a number of photos we took there as well, but this was probably my favorite of the bunch. And then this is a 2-second exposure. So most of my waterfalls, I like them between 1 and 2 seconds. I like the creamier, the more ethereal look of the water. Jeff, the fine art photographer, he was doing like 1,000ths of a second on all his waterfall shots. That's what he liked. Okay, he liked to see individual drops of water. I'm not interested in that. I want to see the movement and such. So that's why this one looks like it is. Again, 25 millimeter lens, and works a treat. This is Aldeafoss, which is a huge waterfall, and it is. We parked the van at the Godafoss parking lot, and then took a 50-minute, that's 50-minute drive in a super Jeep, and it's a Ford Econoline van with these big monster, I don't know, C5 tires on the damn thing. Okay. And it was a 50-minute drive. Now we weren't going real fast, 20, maybe 30 miles an hour at most, and then 2 or 3 miles an hour for some of the slow sections to get up over ice and snow and lots of off-roading to get to this. So that's part of the reason it was so epic. And then there was a 15-minute hike down a ice-covered mountainside to get down to where we could go take these pictures. And Jeff, you can talk panoramas with us next month. This is a 9-shot panorama with a 25 millimeter lens, and that's stitched together. I'm a huge fan of those. I shoot a lot of panoramas. I don't know if any of them are any good or not, but it's a good way to turn the 25 millimeter lens into a much, much wider lens to give you a more expansive view that looks kind of like what it looked like when I was taking these pictures. I had mentioned basalt before. If you look to the left, you see those basalt columns running right out of the water over there, and so it's everywhere on the island. And the noise here, I won't say deafening, but it was very, very loud, very, very loud. Again, this is about a 1.5 second or so exposure. Again, I like the ethereal water look. Now, again, there's also stitching, panorama stitching, so I'm sure that's blurring out some of this as well. I forgot the name of this waterfall. This was back up in the middle of nowhere, kind of in the middle of the island, and such. But it was just a real pretty scene, and I again, 2-second exposure, giving me the real fuzzy and ethereal water out of the thing. One of the more iconic scenes. This is a Kirkafell, which is Church Mountain, and there's some waterfalls and a river right next to it, and that's what this was. So you get into the scene and such, and this is kind of what it looks like. You get on YouTube or Instagram or Flickr, and you'll see lots of photos of this particular spot here. On our last full day of the tour, we had left Vik and we were heading back to Reykjavik, and we left the N1 and we went up what they call the Golden Circle, and that takes you up into the Penvegur National Park. And along the way, there's just this plethora of famous, well-known waterfalls. This is one of them. That day was also a day where we were in and out of whiteout conditions. I mean, blowing hard, snowing. It was the kind of stuff I would have pulled off to the side of the road and kind of let it go by me. But Siggy the Mad Viking, just pressed on and we just made it happen. And we lived to tell the tale. But there, that's pretty much as it came out of the camera. Okay. Now again, this is actually a cell phone taken from the bridge going over the river. And it's that color blue. All right. And just amazing. And my understanding is it is a glacial, highly oxygenated glacial ice with what they call glacial fines, some of the fine rock and rock particles entrained in it, and it gives you this very blue, very light color in the water, was what I was told, and I believed him. But kind of a cool day. Some more reflections, black and white. Again, temperatures were running from the low 20s up into the mid 30s. So typically there was just this very fine sheet of water, very thin on top of all the ice, and we're able to get some fabulous reflection shots. This is obviously on a bay. I had this in one of the photo contests last year, I think on Reflections actually, and this was actually one of the hotel, that picture I showed earlier that had me with the sandwich and the hotel and the picture out the window. That hotel is right behind where I'm taking this picture. I went out after dinner, set up, took a number of shots here, did a number of pan shots as well, and stitched a few together. This one is not. This is a 25 millimeter that's been cropped down. But then turned around and took the picture of the hotel. So never underestimate what you can get in a reflection shot by the size of the puddle. This is a 1 meter square at most puddle of water in between some rocks to get this picture of Eysterhorn one morning. Again, cell phone, super easy because you can hold the cell phone right down to the surface of the water and then hold it upside down, take the picture, and and you get these shots out of it. Just amazing. And again, I had not ever played with this ever before the trip to Iceland, so this is one of the takeaways, a huge takeaway that I continue to use to this day. Taking as many reflection shots as I can when I come across little puddles and something interesting to take a photo of. Not so much of a reflection shot here, just a cool picture, kind of the northwest part of Iceland. I thought black and white would be dramatic because it was just lots of texture and just this awesome thing out there. It was a brutal day. I mean, the day looked kind of like that, although it was blue instead of black and white. One of my favorite photos for the trip. This is the Arnastapi Peninsula, and that's a Stapafell. The mountain is Stapafell, and again, reflected in in a little bit of frozen water. And so there are reindeer. We call them caribou out in the United States and Canada. Reindeer all over Iceland, up in the mountains. Obviously, my Leica with my 90 millimeter lens wasn't going to capture this photo. So at this one particular herd we came across, and very stealthily, we parked away, and we were all very, Call of Duty stealthy, trying to sneak up on these guys. Clearly, they knew we were there, right? I mean, they're looking right at us. Okay, and I was taking pictures of the other guys taking pictures because I do that a lot. And Siggy said, "Hey, why don't you snap some pictures with my camera here, and I'll give you the images." I said, "Okay, great." So he has like a Sony A7R something. Okay, A7. I don't know which A7 it was. It had a 200 to 600 millimeter lens with a 1.4 teleconverter on it. So I think it's like 840 millimeters, hand holding at 250th of a second. And it's got VR in the lens, and it's got stabilization of the body and all these things. And I could not believe I'm standing there standing up, hand holding 840 millimeters at 250th of a second. And they came out. Now, this also been cropped in, okay, but not by much and such. So anyway, reindeer in Iceland, who knew? Um, the reflection picture that I told you was Eisterhorn at sunrise. This is the other side of the range off to the right. That same morning, this is taken probably 20 minutes after that other photo was taken. And yes, this figure down in here is my son down here in the lower right-hand corner. Nick's taking a picture of the mountain. I'm taking a picture of Nick taking a picture. All of these white dots are birds. Okay, you see some over in here. Here they're black. There was just this column of birds, and they would start and they would go up to some altitude. Some of them would break off, go back into the mountains. Some of them would turn back around and spiral back down again. It was just the damnedest thing I'd ever seen before. And this is pretty much exactly what it looked like. It was it was one of the more golden hours I've ever seen. Okay. It helped, of course, that you had this very orangey brown, goldeny color of the dirt and the rock. Okay. Clearly accentuated by a golden sun coming up, but quite something. Another cell phone picture. This is Glacier Lagoon. Okay, this is where the ice blocks that show up on Diamond Beach, this is where they come from. Okay, this is averages 500 feet deep here. Okay, the deepest area is just a few feet shy of 700 feet. Okay, so you get this whole area back here is the outflow from the glacier. It is huge. This is taking 24 millimeters, right? This is huge. And it's probably not a mile away, but maybe 3/4 of a mile away from where I am. And it is just this massive, massive outfall. The discoloration you see on the ice is volcanic dust from previous eruptions. Okay. And so what'll happen is you'll have a section like right here in the middle. It looks like initially I thought it was a road, and what I realized it was volcanic dust. For whatever reason, there's a section at the top of the glacier that had eroded down to one of these stratified dust layers and such. Anyway, it's this is where Diamond Beach ice comes from. Another one of the outflows from some other part, within several miles of the glacier lagoon. And we stopped to take pictures. And again, it's, me taking a picture of my son taking a picture. But you look at all these glaciers and, all these ice, and, it looks dirty. And that's because of these ongoing eruptions. And then also the incessant wind they have will blow dust and dirt on top things as well. So you've seen this picture before. This is from the Yoda Cave. This was presented in the over the course of last year, and the bird, again, better lucky than good. I took I told Nick, I said, Nick, go stand on that rock and look epic, and he did. And then I just was snapping away a lot of photos. I was doing a lot of bracketed shots because I was trying to manage the very high dynamic range. And then one of them turned up. There was the bird. This is not bracketed at all. This is that shot, recovered as much as I wanted to recover it. And I left it dark, and I left a lot of stuff in shadow just because I could. And probably my favorite photo of the entire 2 weeks in Iceland. I take a lot of these kind of photos. Okay, I'm unable. they're using 100 to 400 millimeter lenses on the C stack off there in the distance there to try and foreshorten and do some compression stuff with telephotos with this road. Okay, I can't do that with 90 millimeters, so I tended to take a lot of photos of them taking photos in times when I didn't have the kit to go do it, which is okay with me. I got no issues one way or the other on that. I love my kit. I love using my kit. So I find other things to take pictures of than what they're taking pictures of. And this is not a pose shot. They just jumped up, standing next to each other, and started taking pictures of that thing. And I could not resist. I also did take some photos looking through the the crotch of the arms in here. I would stand such that I could see the C stack. I've got one of Nick doing that and one of Jeff doing that as well. And I've presented them both with those photos. So just because I could. Again, another shot near Lake Mevatin, another cell phone shot. I took this because, well, other than it's just a beautiful location. It was a gorgeous sky. We were coming back from having done a sunrise at a geothermal vent area, which is on the other side of this crater. But what struck me about it is I've spent a lot of years in Hawaii. That looks like Diamond Head. Okay, not exactly, but it looks a lot like Diamond Head. Okay, and there's actually a national park in here, and you can actually hike along the rim all the way around the thing and everything. We didn't do that, but you could if you wanted. But just a pretty view. This is known as the Jon Snow Cave. So any Game of Thrones fans, I think it was like season 2, episode 3, or something like that. This cave is in that episode. This is a 32-second exposure. I shot at f8 at ISO 100 on a tripod. To try and get this to get enough light to make this picture happen. That rock right there on the left, the one looks like maybe it's a stair or something. That's where you come into this cave. And that rock you step down into the cave onto that is, again, it's 2 feet by 3 feet maybe. So there's not a whole lot of room here. And my head's in the ceiling. Okay, I'm hunched over. You can't stand up. I'm crawling on hands and knees. I'm hunched over. I got cold water dripping down the back of my neck because I'm trying to keep it from dripping onto the camera. But anyway, cool photo, interesting colors, and just a lot of fun. We're almost done here. Okay, so one of the second day we were at we went to Black Beach. We were there 2 days. One day, one during the afternoon, then the next morning we went out for the sunrise. When we went out for the sunrise, when we left, we took a chunk of ice back with us. Okay. Again, this is ice that is calved off the Vatna Glacier up in Glacier Lagoon. We were told that was 1,000-year-old ice. All right. So what happens is you take the block of ice. This turned out to be a thing. I didn't know that. Siggy said, "Hey, we're going to take a block of this and we're going to use it in our scotch tonight." And I said, "Oh, look, that's going to raise eyebrows." Well, it turns out it does. And if you look in this picture, look in the upper left-hand corner, you see Thor's hammer there. Okay, that's a big wooden mallet. And then sitting on that piece of plastic tub right there that it's sitting in is this big long thing that looks like a massive marlin spike or a big fid. For braiding rope. And what you see there is the broken up ice. So he sits there and he takes that, big mallet, chomps up the ice, dumps it into your glass, and then pours 12-year-old or 30, whatever you want, however much you're willing to pay, single model over the top of it. So the deal here was this is 1,000-year-old ice cooling down our 12-year-old scotch. All right. And so we had to test that out a couple of times. It's just awesome. Turns out it's a thing. Everybody does it, brings up ice. Everybody thinks they're the first to have ever done it. And it's enough that they have their own hammer there at the bar so they can deal with it. But anyway, another one of those memories, drinking scotch with your son. Next to the last picture here, this is an abstract picture. This is from we went into an ice cave, hiked out there was about a 15, 20 minute or so super Jeep ride out onto a glacier, and then another 20 minutes of walking up to get to an ice cave, and then took a bunch of photos in the ice cave. I didn't show you any of those. They're only okay for me. The best out of there was someone that my son took, but I wasn't going to show those. But I did take this one on the way out, and this is obviously it's been the black and white close-up photo of just the shapes on the ice, and it's upside down and such. But I just couldn't get over the ice was so clear there. I swear you could look like 10 feet into the ice, just solid thick ice in these ice caves, and they're transparent. I was amazed how far in you could see into the ice. This is again, that next to the last day. The reason it looks like it does is because it's blown like hell with snow. Okay. And there was this, we were out, and Siggy said, "Hey, I know there's one other place. Let's go take a photo of a yellow house with a green roof." And so we drove out, and there's nobody there, no cars, no one in the place or anything. We stopped and, must took 30 or 40 pictures here, but this was my favorite of the bunch. And it's just, it's almost sideways snow blowing while we were there. And it was, just fabulous. Good trip. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Well done.
Nice presentation.
They have beautiful pictures, Jim.
And that's just a few. I came home with 5,000 images, and most of them were on the Leica, and then obviously some with the Nikon, and then a bunch with a phone. Though there was probably 400 of those images were off the phone. I no longer feel the need to take a backup camera anymore because the phone can do everything. So.
Do you travel with a laptop and then download in the evening?
So I will do a presentation on that, and I will probably do it in May. So I used to do that, but I started with this trip was the first where I stopped taking a laptop with me, because I would take my laptop, but I'd also bring my iPad, and it's a 11-inch, Pro Max. And I said, I'm just gonna take the iPad. I don't need to have the laptop with me, because I can do it all on a laptop. And then I'm sorry, all on the iPad. And so I have Lightroom, Creative Cloud, Photoshop, and Photoshop Express on my Lightroom, and then I have a whole workflow that I use works a treat. It's just fabulous. And what I love about Lightroom Creative Cloud is I get started on that, and then when I get home, if I want to continue, then I can just log into my Lightroom Classic, and I can get access to the cloud and work from there. Now, the Photoshop part of the house is not as advanced and as capable as the desktop version. Okay, but I'm only editing a few photos a day, and they're going to what I think are some of the better photos, the more interesting photos, and I'm just editing those and then getting them off to Instagram and to Flickr, or texting them to my family that day. And it's really only, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 images tops per day. And I took 5,000 images, right? So the bulk of the editing all got done at home with the full up rounds and everything. And it's just so much. So, and then I would stick a new SD card. SD cards are cheap, right? And so I had like 25 SD cards with me. So every day I downloaded the SD card onto an external drive, and then I stuck a new SD card in and formatted it. And then the SD card and that drive, got stored. So I came home with baggie full of SD cards that had everything, and then this one terabyte, actually had two 1 terabyte drives with all the photos on them, and then that's uploaded that to my off-hole storage, if you will, and that's how I do it. But in the
So
days,
what-
what I would go ahead.
What was those terabyte drives attached to? Your iPad?
Yeah. That's the thing. I can my iPad. I've got a USB hub, and I plug that in USB-C into the iPad, and then just standard SanDisk 1 terabyte drives USB-C into the hub, and then I would put a card reader with the SD card in it into the USB-A port. And so now my iPad, I go to files and I see both drives, and I just literally drop and drag from the SD card onto the 1 terabyte drive, and then walk away for 10 minutes, come back, and it's done. And now I've got the SD card plus the 1 terabyte drive, load in a new SD card, and I'm off to the races. Works like a champ. During the day, what I did though is I would connect my camera to my phone, because I've got Lightroom and Photoshop on my phone as well, and I would download the images. The Leica Photos app is incredibly effective and useful. Some of these apps that the camera companies have that work on your phone that you can connect your they're so. Leica's is unbelievably good, very, very good. Works first time every time. And I pull off the images I want, 4, 5, 6 images, and that's all I would take, because I knew that night I was going to do the backup on it, and then I could start while we were driving in the car. If I didn't want to look out the window, or we stopped at a cafe someplace or stop for lunch, then I could just edit. And by the end of the day, by the time we finish dinner, I have 3 or 4 or 5 images edited, as much as I was going to edit them, and bounced off, because we had Wi-Fi everywhere, and works like a champ. I tell you, it has gotten dramatically more simple for me on the road, and I love it. And I don't need a laptop. Now, the other 3 guys, my son, the other 2 guys, they had their 18-inch, 19-inch, whatever the heck they had, these big old laptops, these big hard drives they had plugged in, and it's too much. It's too much. I don't want to have to deal with it. So